Hello, welcome to another moment on Indigenous Hands, the Indigenous Voices, that is brought to you by Save the Deaf and Endangered Languages Initiative. My name is Ima Asunye, your host on this channel. You know that we are always here every week. Forget about the fact that we have been on a kind of break because of the bulky work that has been in our hands, but we promise to be here to ensure that we continue our discussion on Indigenous Sign Languages of African Deaf Community. It is my pleasure once again today to bring you back to the topic we were handling before the last 2-3 weeks that I had to pause a little bit on the topic to bring you some developing events in our work. And remember, one of the developing events I brought you was the MOU that was signed between SDLE and Zambia Deaf Community to document the indigenous sign languages in Zambia. And I'm telling you, the deaf people who are working with us in this project, they are very excited and they want the work to start as soon as possible. And the second developing event I brought to you was the beginning of activities for the next enrollment on our certificate course on sign linguistics and interpreting after the signing of MOU by SDLE and NILAN. NILAN is an institute in Nigeria that offers courses on several indigenous spoken languages. And this is the first time that through the MOU, NILAN is going to be offering sign language studies. All right. So today I'm going back to the topic, learn from your indigenous deaf signers. And in the last 2 or 3 sections of that topic, we saw the story of Aisha, and then we also saw the interview of Murtala. But today I'm going back to the topic in a different style. So I'm discussing the topic, learn from your indigenous deaf signers, segmenting some of the sign varieties that we collected in the last few years from the indigenous deaf signers that have been working with us. So today I'm going to be looking at the syllables in a sign structure. You see that I had to stand up to do this video today because that's how elated I feel, that's how excited I feel when I'm talking about sign segments, especially when we are looking at these collections and these documentations we've been making for all these few years. And I'm really very excited having a discussion in this regard. So what am I to discuss with you today about the structure or the syllabus of sign language, and especially from the sign varieties that we documented. I want to draw our attention back to what sign language is. You know that sign language is a manual expression of communication. You know that sign languages are expressed through the manual articulation. And you know that before now, many years back, sign languages were not regarded as natural languages until studies have brought us to this. And since the studies have brought us to the understanding that sign languages are like the spoken languages, and the structures, the internal structures that the spoken languages carry, the linguists go to search around by excavating the segments of any language or speech. We can as well do that with sign languages. So linguists have taken up the study of sign languages in a way that they had taken up the study of spoken languages. So today we are talking about the syllable structure of the sign languages. So when we started documenting the indigenous sign languages, one of the things that came to mind was even amongst us, the linguists and the deaf signers that are working with us, was the issue of how to collect the sign segments that are regarded indigenous. And I want to mention this again. What I am discussing here might be particular to the Nigerian society, where the sign language variety that is used in schools is more or less foreign, and the one that is used outside of the school is regarded as local and to some extent not regarded as sign language. So the signers themselves think that some of these other varieties that are used outside of the classroom, that they are nothing more than gesticulations, demonstrations, and you can hear some people say demonstration instead of signing. So when we started the collection, and it took us some time to harmonize what is to be collected. So the idea of what is to be documented was something that, by our experience and training, we were able to harmonize that. But something still, played a good role, which is the issue of having to see a lot of gestured signings in the collections that we have. So, and part of what we were able to do was to, let the deaf people know that they are to give us whatever varieties that they had been using, and a good number of them went into research to really come up with, these sign varieties, because they had to consult their communities. So, I'm going to be showing you some of the signing varieties that we collected. So today, what I'm going to show you are the signs we consider signs with one syllable, which we call monosyllabic. And how did we come about this? You know that in spoken language, in speech, we segment every speech according to how many syllables that speech has. And when we speak, we combine vowels and consonants to make syllables. And syllables are rhythmic because we can, make them to sound like music in so many cases. So because of that rhythmic nature of the syllables, we're able to segment them, and naturally a consonant and a vowel combine together to give us a syllable, or a vowel can give us a syllable, and just a consonant or more than one consonant in many natural languages do not give us a syllable. So in sign languages, the same, we describe sign language syllable or structure from different angles, and one of the ways we can describe this, which we want to apply in our indigenous sign language analysis, is by the movement. So how did we come about the syllables of the sign language varieties that we have collected, or the sign segments that we have collected? We look at the sign segments according to how many movements that are involved in any sign segment. In other words, when a sign segment involves a movement, we say that that sign segment has one syllable. When it involves more than one movement, we say that it has more than one syllable. So in terms of the syllables of the sign segments we collected, we are looking at the syllables according to the number of movements, or according to the movements that are involved in that sign segment. So I'm going to be showing you some sign segments that contain one syllables today, and those are going to form our monosyllabic sign segments. And I want to also let you know that some of these signs might look demonstrative. That is not a problem in any way, because every sign variety has a process it may have taken to come to the point of where we say it is a developed sign variety. So today I want you to see some of our monosyllabic sign segments that we've been collecting. All right, let's see. Okay, you may have noticed that the sign segments that I showed you in the video have a movement that started from a position, or what I would say a location, whether in the neutral space or at the body location, and ends in another location without having to bridge or without having to interrupt the movement. Here we are not looking at the hand shapes. The sign for plate, for instance, gives us a movement that began in the neutral space and with the demonstrative round shape signifying plate, where it starts from the neutral space away from the body of the signer, making a round shape coming closer to the body of the signer, giving us plate without any interruption. Also, the sign for cup, starting from the palm, the passive articulator, going from the palm to the mouth, and that's where the sign ends. So if you look at these two signs, for instance, you find out that their movements were not interrupted. Now, I'm going to show you in subsequent videos of this segment where some signs have a repeated movement, and we did not include those signs that have repeated movements here because we rather want to consider them as not monosyllabic, because those signs mandatorily have those repeated movements to really indicate what they are. You are going to see those in subsequent videos, and otherwise, I mean, it's arguable that they could be monosyllabic, but we are thinking that because they are compulsorily or they are inherently reduplicated, that they may not qualify to be monosyllabic in the category of our analysis. So today I'm glad that we are beginning this topic that will enable us to look at some of the signing varieties that we collected and that we have been working on right now. So we are going to be seeing more of monosyllabic signs and disyllabic signs or multisyllabic signs as we go on. So we learned from a couple of our signers today what a monosyllabic sign looks like. Remember, we do not concern ourselves with the hand shape and palm orientation. Okay, the topic we treated today is monosyllabic sign segments or one syllable sign segments, and we looked at some examples from our deaf signers of those signs whose signing contain the movement that is not interrupted by anything, which in other words can be described as whose signing has one glide from one location to the other that is uninterrupted. This is the Indigenous Hands, the Indigenous Voices that is constantly being brought to you by Save the Deaf and Endangered Languages Initiative. I'm going to see you by next week as we continue on this topic. Learn from your Indigenous deaf signers. We might look at some other monosyllabic signs, or we look at some of the disyllabic or multisyllabic signs. But for the moment, I want to wish you well until I see you next week. Bye-bye.